Hello again, YouTube, and especially all you shirt heat pressers out there. As promised in my last video where I demonstrated my homemade laser alignment system with my Fusion IQ heat press, I'm back to give you my thoughts on what I like and what are maybe some shortcomings with the Fusion IQ. Now, I am going to go into a little bit of detail in each of these, so please bear with me because my focus in this is to help people that are considering the Fusion IQ maybe as an upgrade, or they're trying to figure out where their budget is going to be best allocated, because I was in that boat. I started with an A2Z, had a lot of issues with that design, and after 9-10 months, I decided to ultimately upgrade to the Fusion IQ, and spoiler alert, it's awesome, and despite the hefty cost difference, I haven't lost any sleep or had any buyer's remorse at all. So what I want to do now is take you through what I see are the pros and cons of using it for about 3 months, and hope that those will help inform you if you're in a similar situation. So I'm going to start off with the pros, and the first one is ironically the fact that it's really heavy. And the reason for that is it doesn't shift on the platform. I use a wheeling table because I need to move this from where I store it to where I press. I also need to wheel it all the way out here for you guys when I do these videos, because this part of the house has the most ambient light, and when you're filming indoors, well, you want to be able to see what you're talking about. So the fact that it doesn't shift the platform, the base doesn't move, even though the table it sits on does, is really important. And it may not seem like a big deal at first, but if you use a laser alignment system like I do, especially one that locks to the table, I need to make sure that my heat press doesn't shift too much, because I want to make sure my starting point is as close to perfect as possible, so I'm not constantly having to reorient my lasers. If you aren't familiar with laser designs, what they're good for, or if you are interested and want to see how to make one at home for way cheaper and probably even better than those available in mainstream industry, check out the other videos I've linked. I have this one right here that will illustrate how I design this particular laser system. In that video, I do use it with a USB power block, but all you have to do is get the same type of charger that you would charge your iPad or your iPhone that takes USBs, and then you can plug this into the wall. So very, very easy, and that's what I use. If you're interested in how that laser alignment system works with this particular device, check out this video. So both of those are available for you. Learn, share, get great ideas, create up your own thing. It's all for the better. So let's go through a couple more of the pros here. Another one is that it has a really large platen, 16 by 20. I'll be honest with you, 16 by 20 for the most part is overkill for my current needs, and even a lot of people that are doing really high volumes or have been doing this a long time. Big Brando, I will plug him until the end of doing my apparel related videos, because he's helped me learn a lot along the way. Check out his channel. Big Brando is filled with information. He runs a 15 by 15 press, clamshell style, with a pull-out tray, and he said that's the most he's ever needed. And for a lot of people, unless you do really long designs, that's going to be the case. But what I like about the 16 by 20 is I have a larger size if needed. There's been a few times there's been some weird things where it's actually been kind of advantageous. But the fact that this is changeable, which I'll get to as the next pro in just a minute, makes it I have the largest size if I ever need it, but I can always adjust it without having to have a different heat press. So I do like that the Platen is 16 by 20. The other thing is that, like I just mentioned, these Platens are interchangeable. So let me come around here and show you what I mean. With the flick of a lever, and there's not a lot of tension on this, you just pull this forward, and then the Platen comes straight up, and this is a one heavy-duty Platen. This is made of solid metal and that silicone padding on top. This does have the protective layer on the top of it, which is about 60 bucks extra, but it makes it really, really awesome, because now this will take other Platen sizes. And there's something for everyone. You do a lot of sleeves, they got Platens for that. You want to do the other side of hats, the bills, they got Platens for that. You want to do cozies, they got Platens for that. So there's a lot of versatility in this one unit. And so having too much may be better than not enough. And it turns out it was for me. The only other Platen I currently have is the 4x4. And I got this because it's super, super, super fast to do neck labels with this. I simply drop this, and these have anti-rotation on the bottom, guys. So these little grooves right here are in an X pattern or a cross pattern. They drop right in here like this, and that is basically anti-rotation. It keeps this from rotating around, and then you just literally push that back, and that Platen's not going anywhere. So I should have grabbed a shirt. I didn't. I have this hoodie that I was wearing earlier, so I'll demonstrate on it. On the A2Z Swingaway, when I would do neck labels, I'd have to turn the shirts inside out. I'd run a mouse pad because I didn't want to get, you know, the lines pressed and risk having them scorched, things like that. So I'm going to use a hoodie, but this would work for any type of apparel. You basically just find where the neck label would be. You throw it over the top like that, pull the other part down the front, and voila. You just put your label down there, press it, slide this in and out. I actually do my neck labels with the other benefit, which I'm going to show you next. But it's super, super easy, and you'll never go back. These aren't cheap. That is one of the cons. The Platens are not cheap. They are heavy duty. This was, I think, about $125, and I think the prices may have just gone up. Not sure, but they're worth it if they're going to help you with productivity or just sanity. So that is another key feature, is that the Platens are interchangeable, and they're interchangeable very, very quickly. And let me drop this one back in. I believe this is the heaviest one that they make. I don't know. They have a new one where you can do this in the neck label at the same time. I haven't tried the other ones, but that's pretty heavy and it's easy to maneuver. So that's definitely a pro there. Another pro when it comes to this is the swingaway design. So in my understanding, I haven't been doing shirt pressing all of that long, but there are three kind of styles to how they're used. You have the slide out design, which this one includes. You have the clamshell design, which this one does not. When you open it, it opens kind of like a gator mouth, and you put, you know, your apparel down and then pull the press top straight back down. And then there's the swingaway, which I transitioned from, and it actually does have some advantages in how I work, and I'll explain you that in a minute. There's a little peg back here, and I'll show you a close-up on that. Simply pull this peg out, and that frees up the lock on the mechanism, and that will allow this, it has a little swingaway knob here too, to open this way. So if you don't want or don't have a lot of forward working room this way, or you're just using the swingaway style, this is a good way to work. You can do both. If you want to completely get, this is the thing with some of the swingaways right here, you're still near the heating element. If you're trying to align your thing, your apparel on the back, this, you can actually pull it out a little bit still, fix it and slide it back. I don't use the swingaway all that often, but I do use it in the neck labels because I feel having all of that fabric hanging off, because it's not being spread out like this. This little platen so small, only a little bit of the fabric's on it. The rest is kind of hanging down and draped. And as you slide this back and forth, that can get kind of in the way. And what I'll sometimes do is put shirts that I'm about to press, I'll lay them long ways underneath here. Again, just a nice little thing to have. So just lay them like that, and I don't have to worry about them getting in the way. And then when I'm doing the neck labels, I can push this over, drop this down, press it, swing it back, pull the shirt straight up, and I don't have to worry about you know, sliding it out and whatever. So if this is the style that you prefer to use or that you're familiar with, it's got it included. And it has this little locking pin, so when you rotate it, you'll hear it in a minute. Okay, lock back into place. Now this isn't gonna budge. It took me a minute to actually figure out that you can lock it into place. You pull it all the way out and then rotate the knob, and that will allow it to keep going without locking back into place, because it can obviously be frustrating to have this lock every time you're trying to use it. So anyway, another advantage there is that you get the swingaway option. A big one is that this system is computerized. Now, this does way more than, well, I can currently ever see myself needing. From not only the advantages of when you power it on, it tells you like how long it's estimating for it to heat up to the set temperature, which is really helpful because I know, okay, it's going to take about 27 minutes. I'll run do some other stuff and then come back and check it. But it tells you things like that. It gives you touch readouts on how to do your different setups. It has a really cool stylus that makes that easier. I like that it has an actual readout for your pressure. So as you tighten the knob and clamp it down, it'll show you on a scale of basically 0 to 9 with overpressure what you're set at. So if you're using transfer express levels or transfer express transfers, and they say use between a 6 and an 8, you can put this literally between 6 and 8 and you know you're dialing it in. The other thing is so many of the presets are dialed in. So if you're using goof proofs, you can just tap the screen, find the goof proof setting, and it's going to set it up for you. You don't have to go through and change time, temperature, and pressure. It's going to be set in. If you want to go to glitter or puff or anything like that, that Transfer Express offers, again, Stahl's company, they're preset in here. But you can make your own. So if you really like the vinyl that you use, or you really want to pull this in and you know what the settings are, make your own custom label and then just go to it in the settings. It's super, super easy. It'll also keep up with efficiency logs. You can have it locked where you have to have a code to dial in. You can set it up to where it'll turn itself on and off at set intervals if you know that your shop's going to be open and closed at particular times. You can read about how much productivity this press is doing versus another one based on, you know, time and how many different presses the thing goes through. It does tons and tons of stuff. I like that you got the pressure readout. I like that it tells you how long it takes to get hot. I like that it's really easy to change everything with the stylus, and that's more than I need. So the computer-based work is super, super helpful. It has Wi-Fi built in, so it can get updates from Hotronix, the firmware updates and things like that, which are also really, really helpful. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it could keep a log. So if you're experiencing issues, there might be a way for them to kind of go into your particular unit and see if there's a log on how the performance has tracked and if there was a glitch, if it was computer-based or whatever. I don't know for sure, but it seemed like when I was talking with the support team at Stalls, they were saying that that's some of the advantages of this one. The stylus is, like I said, really helpful. You can use your finger on the touch screen, but the stylus is included and there's a little clip there for it, so that's really helpful. The other thing I meant to mention with the Platen that is awesome is it's fully threadable. And if you're new to you know, doing heat pressing, all that means is that you can pass the Platen, the lower Platen, into the center of your fabric. And so basically, you just take your fabric. This is, again, a hoodie because it's what I have available. And you just can pull it on and then help center your thing like that, and you're good to go. It allows it to lay flat. You can rotate this around. So if you're doing something along the side, you can do that. I don't use the threadability that often. I find that laying it flat on the top is helpful, but I also don't use a lot of hoodies where you're building up a lot of thickness. And if you're gonna run something kind of in, you know, in between here to raise this so you don't kind of scorch your thread lines and things like that, this can be very advantageous. So the benefits of this over like a semi-threadable like the A2Z is that one had a post in the middle. So you could do this, but your lower fabric would bunch in the front because that post in the middle only allows the fabric to travel so far. So instead of your lower fabric, which I'm holding right here, being all the way to the back, it would only be halfway. So what it would kind of have a tendency to do is tilt your fabric. You'd have to pull down more in order to get it centered maybe where you need it, because the fabric would only travel to the middle of the Platen. And some, they're not threadable at all. Some of the designs out there, you can't put the fabric over it. Again, I don't find that detrimental, but it really is advantageous and something that this machine does have. Something to keep in mind. It is only threadable from this direction. Some people, like myself when I first started, prefer to see the design going on the way that they're going to see it in the world. So they want to see it this way facing them. It's easier to kind of visualize it. It's a good way to see if it looks too far down, if you're not using a laser system or a T-square or something like that. It's just a good way to start. You see your product as it's going to be. This, because of the arch, the arm that's holding the Platen, you can't thread this direction. So just something to keep in mind there. So overall, this is a really, really awesome press, but it's not perfect as most things are. So I'll go through a couple of the cons here. Again, a lot of these are so what, but these are things to consider that may be shortcomings for you or things that are maybe a deal breaker altogether. The first thing is it's very expensive. I don't want to give a specific price because if you buy the unit by itself, it's probably like the $2,200 to $2,500 range. But they also have it bundled with various Platens and different things that may be easier to buy together, maybe some cost savings in that. And you can do something else that may help you, and I'll reference that when I cycle back to it at the end. So keeping cost in mind, but regardless, this is going to be a lot more of a budget consideration if you're comparing it to something like I was starting with the A2Z. So kind of the top of the line versus kind of the entry level, there's going to be a huge cost difference there. The other thing is, as mentioned, it's very heavy. And the downside of that is you are going to need a second person to help you get it out of the box and get it on whatever surface you're working with. The A2Z was really heavy, but I was able to get that unboxed and on the table by myself. Maybe not the best form for the lower back, but I was able to do it. This one, no go. The top part wiggles a little bit and the tray can't be locked down, so it slides somewhat kind of freely, and it is really heavy, and then right about 190 pounds. And so as much as I love that for stability, Prior to getting it where I want it, it's a little bit of a pain. So you're definitely gonna need a buddy, and preferably someone who's got a little bit of strength to him to help you get this in place. But once it's set in place, that really doesn't come into play all that often. The only issue, the only hiccup I've had in performance with this has been in the computer, and it's random and it's sporadic, but I do keep my eye on it, and it's with the time setting. So let's say I'm doing goof proof, which is 365 for pressure level. I do it the higher end, so pressure level of 8, 4, 6 seconds. I'll have it from time to time where when I'm done pressing, should reset to those figures, it'll just randomly default back to 4 seconds. And I've noticed that especially if I'm doing a non-locked pre-press, so if I put the garment in to do a pre-press on it and I'm not locking it all the way down, I'm kind of just pulling it, holding it to put some pressure and let the heat transfer, and then I let that go. The time may not go all the way back up to 6 seconds. It may go back to 4 and stop right there. And if I check the computer program, like where I've set it to, it'll say, yeah, it's set to 6 seconds, but it won't read that out. It doesn't happen all the time. It's very, very random, and usually I notice it after a pre-press because you need a certain level of pressure to kind of initiate the press procedure, because once it's initiated, that's when it knows to start the timer. And when there's been a hiccup in the timing, I've kind of noticed it when I haven't locked the pre-press down. So locking the pre-press down seems to keep that from being an issue. Again, it's random, but if you're changing things out or you don't, you want the 6 seconds, like on goof proof, I don't want to run it 4, I want to run it 6 seconds. That might be something that you want to keep an eye on, because if you're running a longer time, say something like 12 seconds, and it were to default back to 6, you could wind up having something that didn't bond properly. So I don't know the exact cause. It may be because I'm not pulling the full lockdown on my pre-press, as I said, but it's the only performance hiccup that I've experienced. So I just kind of make sure I kind of keep my eye on the time, and it doesn't seem to be too far off. The other thing with the Platens, as I mentioned, they are kind of pricey. So if you see a lot of versatility in those Platens, they're going to be expensive. I think this one was right around 125 or 150. But the time it saves me in doing just in the migraine of having to deal with neck labels, it was worth the investment for me. Something to keep in mind would be the cost of the Platens. Look at the website, figure out what you need to start with and moving forward. I'm considering, I think they have 11 by 14 one, which seems to be ideal for doing that mid portion on hoodies. I'll probably get that again for speed. Right now, I'm using a raised piece of silicone padding and it's working just fine. But if I were doing a lot of hoodies, that would certainly be worth the investment. Some of the threadables, like for the sleeves or the cozies or the hat bills, they can be really pricey. So just look at those, and something to keep in mind is the investment there. The other thing with the Platens is, and this isn't a huge deal, but something to really keep in mind especially if you're using a laser system, is that they don't all sit at the exact same height. There's a little bit of give, but because that little give may be only like a millimeter, half a millimeter, it's several rotations of the knob and pressure. So if you're doing, say, excuse me, if you're say doing neck labels and using goof proof, and then you're going to switch to doing a chest center, and it's also goof proof, theoretically your settings won't change. Your time, temperature, pressure, you may want to keep them all the same. But if you go from one to the other, you'll notice that, for example, if you're doing neck labels and you go to pressing a shirt, even threaded, it'll max out the pressure. Like it'll tell you exclamation mark, you're over, the pressure's too high. You need to dial that back because those Platens don't sit the same height. The other thing is, if you're using the laser alignment system with different Platens, again, I don't use it on the neck label one, but if you're using like 11 by 14 or something else, having a difference in height will change if that laser beam is falling in the center of the Platen. Now, you can always line up the center of your garment or the center of where you're pressing with that laser and it'll be fine. But if you need it to be dead center of the Platen itself, just for that being helpful, that difference in height is something to consider in the Platens. Finally, there's two features that some of the higher end versions of this machine and different ones offer that this one doesn't. This doesn't have auto open, and it doesn't have automatic pressure or pressure assist. And what those are is, the auto open is obviously this one. Once it's locked, this will burn your house down if you don't ever lift that back up. It'll beep and it'll alarm and let you know it's done. but there's no way for this to basically eject and let your clothing breathe. It's going to keep applying pressure and heat until you physically open it. I don't have an issue with that because when I'm doing it, that's what I'm focused on. But the auto opens are advantageous because you can start something, clamp it, walk, go get your next design, grab your cell phone, or get a drink or whatever you need to do, come back, and then when it's done and it's beeped, it'll punk cluck, and it'll lift that for you. If it's clamshell style, it'll open so your shirt doesn't scorch and it doesn't go beyond the time that it's supposed to be allocated for. This one doesn't do that, and it doesn't have the auto pressure. Some of them have a little button. They're hooked up to like an air compressor, and they will press the exact amount of pressure you need every time. And I think the same ones that have that kind of auto open. So it is helpful. You hit the button, it does it for you. When it's done, it lifts, and then you just pop the next garment in. It is time saving, it is advantageous, but it's not something I can't live without, and it certainly wasn't a deal breaker for me when considering moving to the Fusion IQ. The final element that I want to talk about, and I'm going to spend a couple minutes on here, is customer service. At the end of the day, you're spending a lot of money and you are buying a machine, and functionality and reliability and ongoing performance into the future are going to be paramount in a successful business and heartache. I had a lot of issues with my A2Z system. Again, I'm going to do another video on that one. I'm going to do this one first, but it will be available. So please watch that if that's something you're considering. I'll take you through my experiences with it and why customer service has become so valuable to me in relation to Hotronix. With this unit in particular, let me put it this way. The only thing that I really experienced was that the stylus got left out of the box. It wasn't a brand new unit. I'm going to circle back around to that pro and con and talk to you about that now. But it didn't come with it. I contacted them and said, hey, I've looked high and low. I looked all over, the house from where I opened it. I looked inside the box. I've looked underneath everything. It's not there. They just sent me one in the mail. Again, you can operate it touchscreen, but the stylus is really helpful. When you're looking at cost, something to consider with Hotronix is they offer refurbs and they offer seconds or returns. The refurbs are one that had some sort of mechanical problem. Hotronix techs fixed whatever that issue was, tested it, said, hey, this is good to go, and they're offering it a discount because it's a used unit. There are some that have gone out and they were undeliverable. Someone wasn't available to sign for them or pick them up. UPS couldn't drop them, so they had to basically return to sender. Some sort of other shipping fiasco. It got lost in a warehouse somewhere. It got moved and they couldn't find it. Hotronix sent a new one out to make the customer happy. UPS located it, sent it back. In those situations, what I was told by basically the head tech at Hotronix is that they open those units and they make sure that in the shipping they weren't jostled, they weren't broken, damaged in any way. They bring them back out, they test them, and then they usually put them back in a brand new box. And at that point, they will sell them at a lower price because they are not right out. Like they're not, this is brand new, we're shipping it to you, you're good. They has circled back around. I guess there's a chance that they could have missed something because of what happened in shipping. And so they offer them at a slight discount. And a slight discount on this type of price is going to be noticeable. And that's what I actually ended up getting. The con to this system, this setup was I had to wait about 3 weeks from the time I decided to get it to actually receiving it. Hotronix obviously has to wait to see if any come back in that manner. Excuse me. If they do, they got to take them back, verify them, repackage them, and then get them to you. But credit to Hotronix, if they go, we can have 2 weeks or longer and none have been returned. You're just waiting. So there's not a guarantee that there will be one in. But when there is, savings can be had. The issue that I had with that experience was that I had a unit in. They called and told me it was ready. They checked it out. They were going to box it up and send it back to me the next day. They were going to ship it out the next day. Something happened with the overnight shift. That unit wound up being damaged. I want to say it fell off something. They moved it, but it was ready. Then the next day it was damaged. They called me back and said, hey, this happened. We're really sorry. You're going to get the next one that comes in. Accidents happen. So that was the only issue I had with this. Customer experience as a whole with Hotronix is invaluable. I genuinely believe that when I called and spoke to most of the tech people that I did, again, I probably called them 35 times over 10 months. Watch the other video. They were supportive. Sometimes, depending on the time of day, it took a while to get through to someone. They were short-staffed because of COVID. They had people that left. They had people working longer shifts. They were struggling just like a lot of industries were. But they stood by what they said they would do. If they said that they were going to send me something, a part to test, they did. If they said that they were going to replace the unit, they did. If they said they were going to cover shipping, they did. If they said they were going to do this, that, or the other, they did. And when you're talking about an item, a product that is got computerized components, it's got movable components, it's going to be used frequently, it's important to have a business that's going to stand by you. And I feel from my experience, Hotronix is going to do that. I didn't always get the answer that I really wanted or preferred, but I always felt whatever it was that was decided was very reasonable. And they always came through. They said they were going to do something, they did it. And to me, that kept my loyalty with them, even though I was frustrated to the point of losing sleep. I had a lot of issues with my first 2 heat presses and some components that I worked with that had me stuck in the water. It prevented me from starting a line, from starting to see if this could be something. And it took a long time. But at the end of the day, they always did what they said they were going to do. So I stayed with them. I tried to be patient. And I even upped my investment level from $400 to over $2,000 because I was shown that they were going to stand by their product. If you are wanting to grow your business, you think your business is going to do this, or you have a failing heat press and you're looking to replace it with something, and this fits the bill, I highly, highly recommend it. And that'll do it, guys. Until next time, be safe and God bless.